Well, I think the implications are dangerous, but I mean, and it's easy to ridicule them. You know, look at the crazy things they say. You want to kill my grandmother, you know, and so on. And there's a lot of nonsense. That's true. But what we really ought to be asking ourselves is why the peace movement, the left, the activist organizations aren't organizing these people. I mean, a lot of what they're protesting is pretty sensible. I mean, a lot of the protests, for example, are against the bailout, the massive bailout. You know, they feel that they were betrayed. You know, they worked very hard to prevent it, and 2 minutes later they got it. And why should the bankers end up from the recession more powerful than they were before, which is what's happening? You can read it in the business press. They're exulting about it. They're more powerful than they were before. The big banks are even bigger than they were. The government insurance policy, the too big to fail insurance policy, is guaranteeing them that they can continue doing exactly what they were doing, which tanked the economy. They can make risky loans and investments. Since it's risky, they'll make a lot of profit. Money coming out of their ears. If it collapses, the taxpayer will come in and bail them out because they're too big to fail. Bonuses and profits are going through the roof, and meanwhile people are suffering. Well, they have a reason to protest that. The tragedy is that the protests and many other things, the protests are being organized by pretty much the same sectors that are creating the crisis. I mean, the corporate money that's behind them is the ones who are very happy that it's coming out like this. And it's a real failure of the activist movements, the left, the peace movement, so on, that we're not organizing. I think that's the question we ought to ask. And there are other things. I mean, there are historical memories that are awakened. You don't want to draw analogies too closely, but there's some similarities which are not encouraging, certainly for someone my age. These people have real grievances. I mean, I have not seen a demographic analysis of, those who call in on talk shows, but I listen to them a lot, and they're interesting. I mean, if you sort of suspend disbelief, you forget about reality of the world, and just listen, it's not a joke. If you listen, the message that comes across has an internal logic to it. It's coherent. It gives answers to people who want answers and need them and deserve them. They're crazy answers, but they're not hearing any others. I mean, these are people who've, worked hard. They're done everything right, Christian, God-fearing, take care of their families, and for 30 years they've been shafted. I mean, the people who for the last 30 years have seen their wages, income stagnate or decline, benefits decline, services decline. There's nothing for their children. The world's out of control. These are the people who, on polls, maybe 80% of them, say the country's going in the wrong direction. The government's run by the few and the special interests, not the people, and so on. They're not wrong. This is all happening to them, and the answers that they're getting from, say, Rush Limbaugh, Michael Savage, the rest of them, are, well, we have an answer. The rich liberals own everything. They own the corporations. They run the government. They run the media. And they don't care about people like you. They don't care about the flyover people between the East Coast and the West Coast. They only care about giving everything you worked for away to, to illegal immigrants or, gays or something. So we got to protect ourselves from them. And furthermore, they run the government. When they put up a health program, it's not to give you health. It's to kill your granny. And that's an answer to something. It's a terrible answer, but it is an answer. And if you do suspend disbelief, you forget about what's happening in the world, really, it's a coherent answer. Now, they're not hearing anything else. And the memory that comes to my mind, again, I don't want to press the analogy too hard, but I think it's worth thinking about, is late Weimar Germany. There were people with real grievances. The Nazis gave them an answer. It's the fault of the Jews and the Bolsheviks, and we've got to protect ourselves from them. And that'll take care of your grievances. And we know what happened. Germany in the 1920s was, you know, the most civilized, the peak of Western civilization, in the arts and the sciences, highly democratic, functioning democratic institutions. A decade later, it was, you know, the pits of human history. Again, the analogy is not, it's not close, but it's frightening. And unless an answer can be given to these people, unless they can be led to understand what's really happening to them, we could be in for trouble.